So I'll be talking about posterior segment manifestations of ocular trauma. Now, as Pranita mentioned, we can have a variety of manifestations in the posterior segment which can affect, and they range from a very innocuous thing like choroidal rupture, which is in the periphery, to the various manifestations which are treatable, and there are other manifestations which are devastating and we actually do not have any treatment for them. uh, it is worthwhile to remember that the same lesion, depending on the location and the extent of involvement, may be innocuous or it may be devastating. Now, while in some of the lesions we have to have a high index of suspicion to diagnose, while others present with obvious symptoms. And I must say that a tailored approach is must for each and individual case for the appropriate outcome. Now, I'll share with you some of the manifestations which are commonly seen, and how do we treat them. Now, this is something we have all of us have seen. This is a choroidal rupture, and this is indirect choroidal rupture, which is temporal to the macula. The visual acuity of this patient is actually 6/6, does not warrant further treatment. But the same thing, if it involves the fovea, it can lead to permanent loss of vision, and that is something which would be devastating for the patient. Now, one must remember that even if there is no vision loss because of the choroidal rupture, in the late phases of the follow-up, the patient can develop a choroidal neovascular membrane, which can lead to loss of vision. So a patient with choroidal rupture must be followed for lifelong. Now, majority of the lesions I'll be talking about is the ones which are treatable and which are less commonly known, and people believe that they are not treatable. So the idea is that we spread awareness about the lesions which are treatable, which can be easily tackled and can lead to good outcome. Submacular or subretinal hemorrhage is one such reason. So if this is a patient who presented with blunt trauma, you can see there is subretinal hemorrhage nasal to the disc as well as in the macula. The visual acuity is 6/36, and you can see the submacular bleed. Now, this is the patient who is actual candidate for the immediate intervention, and this patient underwent intravitreal injection of C3F8 gas 0.3 ml under adequate supervision for control of IOP. As the patient was given prone position at 1 week follow-up, the submacular hemorrhage decreased in the thickness as well as in the extent, and by 1 month the hemorrhage has gone altogether, as is visible on the OCT. What is left is a small little choroidal rupture, but fortunately that is not involving the dead center, and the patient gained a good visual acuity of 6/9. So we can have variety of hemorrhage. Trauma is one of the causes of the multi-layered hemorrhages. Whenever you see a young patient with hemorrhages at multiple levels, that is in the vitreous, in the pre-retinal compartment, subretinal compartment, and the sub-RP compartment, that is one indication that patient may have had a trauma. Out of all these, subretinal hemorrhage is actually the most dangerous. If it present in beneath the macula, can lead to permanent vision loss and warrants immediate intervention. So this is another patient who had submacular hemorrhage, fresh submacular bleed. The patient underwent in pneumatic displacement of the hemorrhage. We can see that the choroidal rupture is visible now. Fortunately, it is sparing the fovea, and the patient gained good visual acuity. If we do not treat such hemorrhages, these hemorrhages tend to get altered in color, and they can lead to permanent damage of the central visual acuity. Rare scenario where the hemorrhages and inflammation subsequently lead to extensive subretinal vision loss, subretinal fibrosis, and visual loss. Coming to the next lesion, this is Berlin's edema. All of us have seen it, may or may not be associated with vitreous hemorrhage. This may be present in the central macula or in the peripheral retina. Now, Berlin edema tends to resolve on its own, but sometimes it may heal with pigmentary changes. And if they do not involve the macula, well and good, it does not affect vision. But sometimes these pigmentary changes can involve the macula. In that scenario, the whole of the RPs and photoreceptors are lost, and it can lead to severe vision loss, which may not be recoverable. Coming to the next lesion, macular hole, it is the favorite lesion of all vitreoretinal surgeons. It's a delight of a macular surgeon. It is not uncommon after blunt trauma. Remember, like all other macular holes, it is treatable with surgery, but not all traumatic macular holes are to be operated. Some of the macular holes, especially the ones which are small, one must wait for 8 to 12 weeks to undertake surgery because spontaneous closure of the macular hole is common in such lesions. And one must rule out the coexisting pathology in terms of optic neuropathy, traumatic optic neuropathy, or coexisting glaucoma, which can play a spoil sport in such cases. Now, this is one of the patients with macular hole with subretinal hemorrhage. As you see, this patient, because of the extensive pigmentary changes and subretinal hemorrhage, was not operated, led to organization of the subretinal bleed and subsequent fibrosis and pigmentary changes, and the macular hole enlarged in size. On the other hand, this patient had Berlin edema with macular hole, which again, the patient, as the Berlin edema resolved, we can see that there is some amount of subretinal hemorrhage also, and this is a oval kind of macular hole, which is very common after trauma. As I mentioned about the spontaneous closure of the macular hole, this is one such case who presented to us with 6/36 vision. We waited for it to close spontaneously, and to our good surprise, it did close on its own. Initially, we could see some EZ defect, which got smaller in size with time, and eventually it filled altogether. So the patient retained good visual acuity of 6/6 in this case. Another patient with spontaneous closure, you can see there is a macular hole, as you can see on the OCT. There are some Berlin's edema with pigmentary changes over this area. Over a period of time, this hole closed spontaneously and the pigmentary changes were left. Pranita, let me know when time is over, we'll stop. So this is another such patient with a small macular hole and subretinal bleed. We did nothing for this patient, and fortunately, again, the patient had good gain in vision with resolution of subretinal hemorrhage as well as macular hole. But some of the macular holes, as shown here, can have extensive pigmentary changes, which is well observed on autofluorescence imaging. These are the macular holes which do not deserve any intervention and should be left alone. This is a macular hole which does not have any coexisting lesion, no subretinal bleed, no Berlin edema, no other changes. This patient was operated, led to closure of the macular hole and good gain in visual acuity. The next lesion would be vitreous hemorrhage and retinal detachment. They can occur in isolation or they can occur together. This RD can be associated with multi-layered hemorrhages. Nowadays, we recommend early vitrectomy for all these lesions, but one must remember that these patients tend to have very high risk of proliferative vitreoretinopathy. And since most of these patients are young, they tend to have prolonged rise in intraocular pressure even after the retina is attached. And this could be due to variety of retinal tears. Retinal detachment in these patients could be due to variety of tears, which range from small oral tears to dialysis to giant retinal tears. One must rule out foreign body in all such cases. And if there is associated subretinal hemorrhage, that is one of indicators of guarded visual prognosis. But one must remember that RRDs, which are associated with open globe injuries, tend to have poor visual prognosis. This is one such patient who had a giant retinal dialysis in the supranasal quadrant. The patient underwent surgery. The macula was on to begin with. The macula remained on, and the patient retained a good visual acuity of 6/6. Again, one such patient who had a large tear near the macula in the infratemporal quadrant. This patient underwent surgery and did well. But see what has started happening. The one edge of the tear has started rolling. Over a period of time, this rolling worsened, and the patient again was taken up for surgery, and the patient did well. So what I mean to say, one surgery may not suffice in all the cases, and you must maintain a good follow-up so that these patients can be tackled in time. This is another lesion. Last slide, Pranita.
Yes,
So this is something called optic nerve avulsion, which is not very common, but once it happens, it can present with signs of CRAO, where there is diffuse retinal edema and there is hemorrhage from the optic nerve injury. And we know that this patient has lost vision forever and is not going to do well. So I'll skip this part. Foreign body part. To conclude, trauma can be associated with wide variety of manifestations. Individualized approach is necessary in all these patients, and one needs to be aggressive in certain scenarios, while careful wait and watch approach is must in others. Coexisting optic nerve injury may play a spoil sport in these cases, and one must watch out for raised IOP in the long term for these patients. Thank you very much.